we have Jaya Baloo. For those of you who do not know her, you will find out during the conversation who she is and what she does. I would say the summary of it is that she's the queen of quantum. Come on up.
Jaya, I'm really excited to have you here. I think you always bring new energy to any discussion, so that's really nice. But importantly, I think you offer a new and maybe unique perspective on quantum and its impact, given your experience in business and enterprise with this topic. But before we go there, there's something that I would briefly like to touch upon. It's something that we share that people might not know, because like me, you really like stargazing, don't you?
Yeah.
Yeah. So
I do.
So what is it about it that triggers you, that intrigues you?
I think in general, it's a sense of frustration. And I think we might share that. But the frustration is the fact that we haven't been doing what we could have been doing had we better focused on the goal. My daughter has a poster, which obviously I put up in her room, of the solar system. And she used to ask me, how far have we gone? How many of those planets did we see? And I find it incredibly disappointing to admit that we haven't really gotten ourselves off of this rock. So the idea that we could be doing so much more, we could be improving not only our lives, but those of the billions that occupy this rock, by just going a little bit further, a little bit faster, that's what attracts me to space.
Excellent. I could not have said it any better. So is that a similar drive for you when it comes to quantum technology?
I think so. I think the biggest thing is, look, I do believe, all right, maybe I do believe a little bit of the hype, but I want to believe some of the hype, because I do think there's an enormous amount of potential here. But we can only exercise this full potential when we've mitigated any potential downsides. And working in information security, I can tell you, we have a tendency as humans to continuously invent new technologies with old shitty vulnerabilities. So what I'd like to stop us from doing is getting out of that rat race of continuously ensuring our own destruction with the advent of anything new, and this time build it better. And we can do that because we have an idea of what some of the potential risks are. And if we know enough to at least educate, inform, and NIST is doing wonderful work in this direction. We'll see them again at the ETSI PQC for Europeans who are concerned about doing things on post-quantum stuff. So I really believe it's about making sure everybody knows how we can mitigate the downsides and plan for the future and do it better.
But you've been involved in this I guess for a decade or so, especially during your time at KPN, in one of the pioneering projects at that time. Were you already aware of that, I guess, lack, or is it something that you learned along the way? Were you pushing that already?
I'm so old.
No,
question,
that's not what I mean.
No, that's so. It actually goes even back further than that. So I think I was maybe 28 or 29. I don't know. It was a while ago. Okay, so it was way longer than a decade ago. It was when I gave a talk at the Geneva Press Club about lawful interception and how lawful interception works across Europe, and how it was a requirement for joining the European community that we had a common basis to do lawful interception. When mandated by the police authorities, they can tap into networks and read all the communication. And someone in the audience was like, "Yeah, but what about untappable communications?" So I said, look, if it's encrypted, it's fine. We'll take it and we'll analyze it. It's a challenge for the police. No. But what if it's not decryptable? And so I thought, okay, that's pretty impossible. Nice try. But then I thought, okay, let's hear more about this. And I met Nicolas Gisin and the folks who were starting ID Quantique at the University of Geneva when it was still a dream in someone's eye rather than the entity that it is. So it was way back.
Yeah. So let's look a little bit more into the promise, I suppose, which was even there 20 years ago or so. And I would like to use a couple of statements on the screen to do that, and also engage with the audience, both here and online. And my suggestion would be to have the statement and ask the audience first, and then I'll come back to reflect a little bit deeper, if that's okay with you. Right. So I guess the first statement would be, And we've heard a lot. I think you've learned a lot. So maybe it's a good time now to reflect a little bit. Even if half the promises of quantum technology that we've heard about come through, society will change dramatically. Is there anyone, hopefully, who wants to kind of reflect on that right now, having heard all the things we've heard until now? Who's yes? Well, Peter, take it away.
Yeah, this is hype. Even if none of the promises of quantum technology will become true, society will change dramatically anyway. So it's a non-starter.
Anyone else after this? So, but just to continue, I mean, we've heard a lot about opportunities, right? I think in the beginning, the talk of the board talked about there are these opportunities, there are these threats. From your perspective, with your experience in, let's say, enterprise or maybe the security and communication domain, is this driven mostly by the threat? Because that's what I always hear. Or are people also looking at these opportunities?
To be honest, the biggest problem we have in information security today, and it's the hands down the biggest problem, is we don't know what we have in the largest sense. We don't know what we have, and we certainly don't understand what we need to defend and from whom. So that whole idea of having this threat model and appropriately assessing your situation to be able to meet whatever threat it is, that's where we pretty much, and this is a technical term, we suck, okay? We're so bad at it. So what I really appreciate about some of the, I would say, challenges that we have, and whether that's coming from computing or from simulation, because there's a really good ACM paper out with Chris Hoefnagel who says, before you worry about a quantum computing threat, take a look at what simulators are going to bring about in a much quicker time space. Anyway, the point is that for cybersecurity, I do see this as an opportunity, because if I tell everyone, all right, folks, we do need to kind of evolve our current cryptographic landscape to accommodate one that is still robust and resilient post-quantum, you have to know that majority of people are like, yeah, what does that mean? They have no idea what the current cryptographic protocols that they use currently, right now, are. So it's a challenge for me just to get that answered, just to figure out what people are using today. I see that as a huge cleanup opportunity. It's kind of like when you ask your teenagers where stuff is in the house. It's the same kind of question across the internet society. Yeah.
I'm wondering maybe you from NIST would like to respond. We just had this NIST competition with the new standards for post-quantum. Maybe it's too obvious because if you hear this, why did we even bother to go there? Are we too early or?
Oh, are you saying that simulation is going to be I love that thought, and I'm going to look up that paper about simulation being a nearer-term threat and something to worry about. But you're saying, is the threat so big from other sources that why bother with PQC?
No, my question would be because people even don't really understand what they're currently working with. So isn't it a bridge too far to ask them to think about the next step?
No, and actually I appreciated the nod to NIST there, because it really is anticipatory, right? And it's not too soon. It's going to take years, right, to migrate to new algorithms, and it takes years for everybody to try to find those vulnerabilities, and there will be some, right? So you can't be too soon, and so I'm really grateful that we've picked some winning algorithms already, and the competition's still ongoing. There's anticipated to be, not a dozen more selected, but a couple of more selected. And for different types of security applications.
And just to be clear, that transition time is the thing that threatens us most. So it's not about just having good standards, which, by the way, is a challenge unto itself, because there's a certain amount of imagine it like, you sometimes have to bake stuff in recipes and you don't know how long it takes, and you have the toothpick thing. It's kind of like that, except with cryptographic algorithms. So we don't know when they're really done, because we don't know when they've been tested adequately. And a really good example of this is the fact that recently there were 4 candidate algorithms that are there for signatures as well as key exchange. And then there was 4 alternate algorithms. And you might have seen the news about SIKE, super singular isogeny key exchange, SIKE. Did anyone see that? Yeah, SIKE was broken, and it wasn't broken by a quantum computer. It was broken by a really shitty computer. Yeah. So the worry here is people will be able to invent things that they themselves will not be able to break, but somebody else will. So purely from a mathematical perspective, we need that baking time, you know, we need to kind of test the hardness of these algorithms literally by allowing them enough time for cryptanalysis and, you know, all kinds of different attacks. And even when we do that, there's going to be implementational failures. When we try to bake this stuff in, there's going to be problems. So I would like us to have hybridity at all levels. So I'm a big fan of, and I think, you know, I'm not the only one, but I'm a big fan of combining PQC with like all types of quantum communication technologies. I'm also a really big fan of, even within the PQC, you know, looking for that crypto agility, making sure that we have more than one defense mechanism and building in defense in depth. This is not a really popular opinion, not the crypto agility part, that is, but combining PQC, QKD, quantum comms, this is not very popular, and I want it to be.
Okay, well, we can jointly try to make that. I want to make a little different step. So how about, you know, the difference between, let's say, the question that was asked before, right? What we're doing here in the West and what's, you know, not being, what people aren't able to do maybe in the South. Is that a perspective that you encountered in these enterprises like KPN or maybe where you work now, FAST? Is that something that is important?
Yeah, of course. So, I mean, this first of all, there already is a digital divide. We already know this. It currently exists with the current technologies that we already have. Not everyone has access to the internet. It's not a foregone conclusion that people will be able to, you know, get on a machine and know what to do and how to connect. So I'm a very big fan of these quantum demonstrators. I'm really big fan of the IBM initiating, you know, pioneering the idea of having quantum in the cloud, and the whole idea that now is also with the TU Delft trying to do the same thing. I think accessibility is the biggest key. I do think, though, there's something to be said which is interesting around intellectual property. So let's say we make accessibility available, so just that you can get on a system, all right? Assuming you do have a couple of components. What does it mean for the IP that is then created on these systems? Who does it belong to? And I think this goes back to this idea of sovereignty. If we want long-term prosperity, we need to have a way to ensure that sovereignty and protection around intellectual property. So let's, again, purely hypothetical. What if you have a quantum computer in the cloud, accessible to everyone, and there's some kids from Africa writing some really nifty algorithms? Who does it belong to?
Is there anyone who would like to respond to that maybe? It's a good question. Anyone who has a feeling about it, an idea, a concept? Yeah. Oh, Frederik, maybe?
I love the actual question. But in a lot of like term and user agreements, it's already stated that some of the platforms actually own it, which is indeed a problem.
IBM.
Yeah.
I know. I'm not asking for the right answer. I'm asking for the socially desirable one.
The people that make it.
Maybe yours has a sociable.
Well, so like obviously, you know, there's a lot of contractual ways, like in which like intellectual property gets organized. But there are also, I mean, intellectual property is protected at the international level, the WIPO agreement, and there are ways in which, you know, there can be exceptions to intellectual property too, also in the international context. So one area that you can look is like very active discussion is around the vaccines, you know, like so, and that there's quite a bit of pressure, and there are legal mechanisms, you know, to ensure there can be, you know, like exceptions to intellectual property, and I think it will make a lot of sense also to look at that, you know, in a global context where, you know, the quantum haves and the quantum have-nots kind of problem could be very significant without those types of exceptions.
So, zooming back a little bit, I think we also touched upon the sovereignty, European sovereignty, and I guess this next, it's imperative that we protect European research and innovation and do everything we can to keep the results here. It's not just about IP, but it's also about startups, for instance, or capital, startups being sold or taken over. How do you feel about that? from
So-
that perspective.
So clearly, like there's a dual-edged sword here, right? And this question is actually hiding lots of different little evils down here. If we want to protect European research and innovation, does that mean that we don't allow foreign citizens or foreign nationals to work jointly on that research? What does it mean in terms of how we protect IP? Does it mean that we then close, for example, certain key technologies from export without a license? Does it mean that we do not publish anymore, like the Chinese example? Like, I would like to understand, what do we mean? Like, really, what do we mean? And are we willing, if we say that sovereignty is truly important, and we know that there's three major players, there's the US, there's Europe, and there's China, and we want to wind up, at least in the top two, who do we need to blow up, the US or China? And I'm not saying this theoretically, because we are going to align. We are going to pick a side, and we are going to make decisions that then follow suit. So does that mean that we are going to screen people who work on joint research? Does that mean we will only accept algorithms or work that's coming from certain geographies? Does that mean that we no longer allow entrance to students in our universities? Anyway, I'll leave that to you.
All right, very good. There's, I think, someone who's wants to respond to this.
Yes, this is Astrid Bötticher from University of Jena. So there is already research in Germany going on where scientists need to sign that they do not have Chinese or Indian students in their projects for security reasons. And it is already an active problem, at least in the German society.
But then my question would be, do you think that this is not quantum specific, I think, right? This is broader. Or is it specifically for quantum? And
This is specifically from quantum, the example.
Because then my question, back to the previous slide, do you feel quantum can enlarge that problem?
I think you're right. It is quantum. So although I would love to say it's everywhere, it's not. Because, for example, I was just in Germany last week. I was in Nuremberg at the largest cybersecurity conference. And one of the biggest questions that I got asked by journalists was about Huawei equipment, which, by the way, all German telecoms are still using in their networks for all 5G and everything else. So, I feel like quantum is getting special treatment. And the question is, how do we want to see this evolve? And how far are we prepared to go?
And are you willing to give your opinion on those questions yourselves?
Well, I am a difficult human. Let me put it this way. So I was born in India. I grew up in the United States. My parents live in Florida. My brother lives in Seattle. And I've been married and very happily and living in the Netherlands for the last 25 years. I have a Dutch passport and an American passport. But again, born in India. So what am I? Thank you, Freke. I'm a global citizen. And do you really feel that your nationality truly says who you are? Okay, I'm going to way too liberal, let's ban all borders kind of conversation. I'm not going to go there, but my own idea is much more about getting off the rock than worrying about which part of the rock are you from.
So maybe I can ask Freke, because a big term that we use in the Quantum Delta program, which I guess in Dutch is muurloos ecosysteem, we're trying to realize a borderless, I guess, ecosystem in the Netherlands. Can you reflect on this, given what you just heard?
Well, let me start by saying that I truly relate to what you're saying. So in essence, if you ask me, I'm like John Lennon, imagine all the people, right? It's about people, it's not about where you come from. And I find it personally quite hard to accept that because a person may be from China, was born there, but may have the brightest brains, and that we would say, sorry, you're no longer allowed. So it just reflects the hard questions that we face. And it's this balance we need to find. And I truly hope that we won't overreact, because this is not semicon. It's not that there's a quantum chip in everything now. It's different. It's more in the R&D stage, and hopefully we can relax a bit longer at least.
Thank you. So, one more? Oh, yes. Please.
Good afternoon. My name is Marisa Borsboom, and I'm a Portuguese in the Netherlands. And I was not going to ask any of that, but it strikes me now that we keep talking about this different world, Europe. And when I see an initiative in the Netherlands, and I see, for example, that the south of Europe is not there. And it's not there because Portugal, I've been talking with the Portuguese people, believe me, guys, the Netherlands, they are doing, and they're like, oh, we don't have money for that. And then, like, are we even prepared to understand that in Europe? So what Europe are you talking about? Because I was in Brussels last week and I keep saying, what Europe are you talking about? Is a Portuguese kid now in the north of Portugal able to do what a Dutch kid is able? Even if 60% go falling, unfortunately, here in the Netherlands. But if we are so ambitious, and the rock, my ambition is to fix the rock in the sense of, can we fix our capacity of thinking? Because it's like we want to evolve with the same systems. We want to, and simple things like Europe. What Europe? We have a European Union and we don't have a European program.
We do have a European program. It's the Quantum Flagship, which is one of 3 flagships. There's more than €1 billion for this Quantum Flagship. But there are some things that I'm going to talk about my personal views, not as a vice chair of the Quantum Flagship for just one moment, and you'll understand why. Because I want to ask you, what do you believe is the biggest strategy if we actually want to accomplish some of these more radical goals? If we actually want to succeed with all the ambitious KPIs, do we actually need to run far or run fast? Because the clue is if we run far, we need to include everyone from Europe. But if we run fast, faster than other geographies in this case, then we cannot include everyone. We only take the best and we go. And the clue is, right now, sometimes when I'm sitting in some of these meetings, it feels like the Eurovision Song Festival. Everyone gives each other points, for whatever initiative, and I don't believe that that is actually the path to success. I think we need to bet on the winning horses, on the winning research, and then just go. And I agree with you, but I believe that once we have won that leg of the race where we go fast, then we can afford the luxury of going far.
Actually, in the program, I had anticipated some time to give you some takeaway messages, but I think you already did. So I think it's a good time to thank you very much. And we're looking forward to your interaction in the future. So with that, I think, Deborah.
Thank you.
We've come to the end of the program. And I would like to ask all of the speakers on stage for a thank you round. So Eline, Freek, Daria isn't here, but we really appreciate you being here and sharing your ideas and your knowledge and sort of kickstarting this whole discussion. And I've personally had some really interesting thoughts around it. We meet for the first time today in person, but we should definitely go for a coffee and have a further chat. And I think, Jaya, what sort of the insight you gave me today is how can we, also from the Center of Quantum and Society, how can we sort of flip the coin in terms of, you can see public key encryption being broken as a threat, but it's actually a huge opportunity to get rid of all the shitty IT and clean things up and move to a better place. Freke, you're always great to have here and sort of share the ideas of why Quantum Delta Netherlands is here. And I think you're also a great personal asset to the board because you have very strong personal values and ethics, which you bring into the conversation. So thank you very much. We have some small gifts. Oh. And I think, Daria, if you're still watching, yours will be sent. Don't worry.
Thank you.
And of course, Deborah.
Being, I get one too.
Yes. Thank you very much, Deborah. Thanks. Yeah, you have the different books. But before we go to the real end, of course, there were more people that were involved in this day. First of all, I'd really like to thank all the people from Quantum Amsterdam who were so nice to host this event. Of course, Startup Village, the place where we are now. But there are two people I want to thank in particular, and I want to ask them to join us on the stage, and that's Inge and Vania, because they were working really hard. Are they still here? Yes, come. Yeah. Yay. Keep on applauding. So Inge has been working very hard as sort of the project manager behind the scenes, arranging everything. So I have only two hands, but there you go. Thank you very much. Applause. Thanks.
Good job.
And Vania, actually Vania is also part of our Action Line team. She's our community manager, so she helps do all the communication. And yeah, so I think all the emails and messages and social media posts that you have seen were done by her, so thank you very much. Right? And yeah, then we go to the last slide between me and the drinks. Of course, again, just to remind you, if you really want to join our efforts and join this journey and join our challenges and bring input, on all these different workshops or thinking about use cases and their impact, please just contact us through the email address, which is barely visible, but that will be cqs@quantumdelta.nl. Thank you, Eline. Or just talk to one of us right now. And with that, Deborah?
Thank you very much. Thank you, Victor. And hope to speak to all of you at the drinks. Thanks.
Thanks.